Welcome to Show Studio. We've got two panels this evening, but the first of which is an incredibly exciting one because we're going to be discussing the Rodarte A collection. And I've got a set of panellists with me who are incredibly enthusiastic about Rodarte A, so it's going to make for a brilliant, very sort of strong female panel, which I'm looking forward to. But before we start unpicking New York Fashion Week and the latest output from Kate and Laura, let's let our panellists introduce themselves, starting with you, Hilary.
Hello, I'm Hilary Alexander and I'm a freelance fashion writer.
Hello, I'm Jackie Dixon and I'm a photographer.
Hello, I'm Kate Montano, I'm a makeup artist.
Hi, I'm Garnett and I'm a stylist.
I'm Camilla Morton and I'm a fashion writer.
And I'm Stoppard and I'm an alcoholic. I'm totally kidding.
They're bad.
I want to start by going straight to you, Hilary, because when you first arrived, one of the first things you said to me is you said, I love Rodarte, I'm so excited for this one, they're one of my favourites. Why do you love them so much? What's so great about them?
Firstly, I think they're the closest thing that New York Fashion Week has got to a kind of anarchic, completely off the wall, sort of like a London designer label. And secondly, because it was Anna Wintour who first sort of nudged me in the direction and said, you've got to go and see their collection. It was in 2005. They are really amazing, you'll love them. And I did.
Do we all agree with that kind of London-y spirit?
That's exactly what I said to Bay earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, because to me it's as if they're kind of more, they're so influenced by their own references in a way.
Completely.
So whether it's an LA story or whether it's Picnic at Hanging Rock, I mean it might not be that, but it's they're so singular and they're so kind of creative in and they just do, they so follow their own stories. And I love that about them.
They're quite anti-fashion, aren't they? They're quite anti-fashion in that sense.
Oh, completely.
They're not following trends or thinking about, you know, they're doing it for themselves. They're dressing the girl that they love.
don't get bogged down.
You really feel that.
It's definitely what I love about them.
Yeah,
I
me
mean,
too.
the first time they showed it was just 10 pieces, wasn't it? Which, you know, I like the fact that they're not so preoccupied with how it should be done, or we've got to do a show, or we've got, you know, that was their, you know, and they're doing a presentation now. That's how they decided to do it. And yeah, they were on the cover of Womenswear Daily, weren't they?
Yeah, and that infuses each garment. They've said before, you know, wearability is subjective, that whole idea that actually it doesn't matter
And I love
so
that.
much.
I love that they say that. They kind of take no prisoners. It's like people might criticise them and say, but when you look at like the LA, let's call it the LA last collection, you look at it and actually I couldn't or want to wear much of it, but I loved it. It was a great story, and that's enough, maybe, you know. And then I guess they do the. But for me, that's exciting. That's great.
Yeah, New York needs that. New York, otherwise for us it's a little bit boring.
I think there's a sort of almost like a punk kind of attitude, you know, to what they do. And like, here I am, take it or leave it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
when we don't care if you like it or not. But this is what we feel, and there's sort of very obscure, strange references. I mean, I remember one collection that had some. I think it was the redwoods in Yosemite Park or something. You know, and that was sort of done in print, and it was sort of on the shoes. And when you talk to the two sisters, they very often cannot actually really articulate even.
Because they're quite quiet, aren't they?
Yes.
They're so not like their clothes. So I've worked with them for very.
Go on,
They're
darling.
so they've got such kind of you feel like they've really absorbed culture. You know, they're really clever in that they draw references from so many different places.
Completely.
I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, they almost feel like there's something quite sort of geeky about them, which is really good in a way, because this is going to come through in the collection we're going to see, because there's some Star Wars sort of inspirations behind it, which is obviously incredibly nerdy, but I think that's very apt for them, because there's always this little sense of them being a bit in the books or in a fairy tale, and that's great, isn't it?
Yeah, they must be enjoying what they're doing. That's what that says to me, that if your spirit's in it, you're enjoying what you're doing. You're not actually just making clothes for a business.
When you mentioned in the book, it's weird you should say that, because sometimes I kind of almost see them as like the Bronte sisters, you know, and like isolated, you know, from
completely.
a lot of the world, and yet living in the imagination.
Yes.
And they look like that. When you see them photographed, you kind of love them. There's something not defiant exactly, but there's something very singular about their kind of persona, and they're kind of unapologetic.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You know, you kind of, they don't look like fashion designers or how you like a stereotypical.
And they don't look like girls who live the life that the clothes that they've made are wearing. You know what I mean? They don't look like they've been out,
and over the
out
years
and about. They haven't been a centre of attention themselves. They're the girls who are making clothes in their, like, as you say, like the Bronte sisters in their little world, imagining, and that great imaginations come from that.
I think fashion tends to put people on such a conveyor belt that it kind of swipes the sort of fantasy element out of things, and I think New York particularly, it does have a danger of being a bit processed cheese at times, and I think that they've got a really cool devil-may-care attitude, and I like that they've stayed in New York rather than come over to Paris or London. And you know, I think if they were in London alongside a Medium Kirchhoff or something like that, maybe it wouldn't have the same resonance, but I think because they are such a sort of unique, they're almost like going to see an artist in a gallery in New York rather than yet another.
And they show a lot through that medium, through exhibiting.
And film collaborations.
Completely.
You know, and you really feel that they draw on film, and you really, you know, you feel like they're kind of so culturally kind of on it.
They're interesting.
Really curious
and it never feels forced. It's not just like an artist's name thrown into a show.
They're really curious.
I remember one show I went to of theirs. Oh gosh, it must be probably 6 years ago. And at the finale, they played Yes, All Good People, which is like a late 70s prog rock. And I just happened to be a Yes fanatic. But it was like this sort of, my God.
Can you give us a rendition like you were doing before we went live?
All good people turn their heads this way, I'm on my way. Well done. It was sort of so
That's amazing.
bizarre and kind of off the wall and random, and yet it struck a chord. And I think that whatever they do, it kind of strikes a chord somewhere with everybody.
Completely. Well, it's interesting because Baye, you said the word story, which I really picked up on, and Camilla, you said fantasy. And I want to talk a little bit about this idea of collections that have a story or collections that have a narrative, because it's something that really interests me. And people talk a lot about kind of the decline of narrative fashion. You know, there's not a space for it, there's not time for it on the schedules, and people often, you know, they talk about the fact that Galliano's no longer at Dior, and he was kind of that, and Lee McQueen is no longer with us, and they were the kind of the last great bastions of storytelling. Do we agree with that? Do we think we have seen a decline?
I think the pressure of business and commerce and what you need to produce has kind of eclipsed the narrative vibe, but I think actually truly great and original collections come from a strong narrative, because you can't create a character or a muse unless you've got the narrative in place. And there is the woman that needs a pair of jeans, white shirt, every season, but there is somebody that wants to be a bit inspired as well.
Do you find that as a stylist, because obviously it must be I wonder about the difference between working with a collection that has a real story and narrative to it, and working with a collection that is more clothes rather than...
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of so many stylists say this, and I think in a way you have to believe it to be a stylist, which is that it's all about storytelling.
Yeah.
You know, so even if other people don't see your story, you've got to see your story. You know, and that story might be something might be neon story. But usually if I do a story, I kind of try and make it, I mean, to say kind of a narrative or film, that sounds kind of pretentious, but what I mean is it has to, I usually do, my references usually start from a film or something, because to me that's just, fashion in itself is great and all that, but I personally, I love the idea of storytelling. It's just it's what I like.
Yeah. It makes it real. It makes it so much more real. I mean, even as a makeup artist, I do the same thing. If I'm doing a beauty job and it's just about makeup, I should be loving that. But actually, I really don't like it. I like it when there's a girl that I can imagine who she is, and even if it's just eyeliner or moisturiser, there's a person, because it doesn't. I'm not inspired by products and pots of paint or fabric alone.
What I found interesting about the spring-summer collection, not entirely the narrative, but the fact that so many designers who previously might have been considered very minimalist, like even Celine, Phoebe, you know, were kind of deliberately referencing a painter or an illustrator, or so in a sense the person who was actually writing about it or doing a critique had a kind of fixed point from which to then build their understanding of the collection. And I think this is a good thing, because if you're just presented with a series of clothes and someone sort of backstage sort of says, oh, well, you know, I was thinking concrete, or I was urban, or, you know.
Yeah, but that's not helpful. I mean,
No.
I used to...
But the idea of using, you know, a narrative or an artist or an illustration. I mean, Carl used, like he said, German, antique German colour chart, and Roxandra Linczyk used that. I'd never heard the word. He was called a concrete artist or concretist from Brazil or something. So it gives you a starting point from which to then observe and build.
Yeah, it becomes kind of emotional.
Yes.
It kind of stops being kind of intellectual and surface and dry, and it becomes something
that's right.
But it is also...
And that's also what women wear. That's why women are buying clothes in the first place. Let's not forget. Like, do we need any more clothes? No, we don't. We've all got trousers, skirts, jumpers. We've got dresses for the summer. We don't need any more. What makes us as individuals buy another thing? It's because in our minds, you know.
But that's what the show's all about.
Story,
I mean, when you find a press release on your chair at a show, what you're meant to do is a good press release is to give you enough clues to take you in, because it's like leaving a trail going up to Hansel and Gretel's house. You have to leave enough sweets that you can tell enough from the crumbs, that you give enough clues that they don't go off and say it's Marie Antoinette when you're referencing something completely different. You know, some of the obscure references that we used to look at, it was too oblique that you needed to slightly, and it's a bit of a female wile, isn't it? That you put something into somebody's hands and then they interpret it as their own idea. If you half feed a story out there and then they take the story on board, then they're invested on it and they become part of the story and they think that the story's their own, and then the clothes speak to them more, and you have to draw people in, like giving them these little clues and lure them in with you. And if you have a collection like Rodarte or a very sort of fantastical collection, if you just give little tidbits before you sit down, that, or the music or the makeup or the styling, it's all these little clues that, you know, whether you're watching it on style.com or whether you're writing about it or whether you're buying it, you can kind of see how that woman might be you in some way.
Exactly, and you had me at Star Wars.
Before we go and look at the collection, there's one more thing which I want to talk about, which we were actually discussing a little bit before we went live, which is the fact that, you know, they are two women, two sisters. There's something very feminine about what they do. You know, Rodarte comes from their mother's maiden name. There's something very sort of independent and female about them. And I'm just interested, because we have got an all-female panel, so it's a good crowdsourcing opportunity. I'm interested in whether you feel that's made a difference in their work. Do you see that kind of sense of pro-woman shining through, or is that being too simplistic? You don't think it's as...
I don't know. I think, for example, that probably, I don't know if I'm generalising too much here, but I think probably, or almost possibly, the majority of men would probably not find Rodarte clothes sexy in the way that they would, Cavalli, for example.
But it'll be interesting to see how the duo of Katie and Luella do later on this evening, because you've now got another female duo coming up.
I mean, my thing is when conversations like this arise, it's, you know, when you talk about, you know, the term career woman, the term career man doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So sometimes I stop and think, why are we talking about two strong women? You'd never talk about two strong men getting together. You know, you don't talk about rag and bone and say, oh, they're two strong men. So sometimes I'm sort of thinking, why are we talking about two strong women? They're two women. Do we need to vocalise that they're strong?
No, I think there's something they've made a choice to sort of draw attention to the fact that they are women, they are sisters, they even through their mothers.
So I find Rodarte I find their reference point in their work, the way that they reference, and I might be so completely enough, but I feel like it's quite a female reference
and they're
point
also
that they
quite,
have. I just do the way that they draw information from culture, from literature, from films. I find the way that they do it so kind of, I'm so not going to say better, because that's so the wrong word, but they do it in a way that I find quite female.
Well, I guess that's what I'm getting at. Is there something female about what they do?
There's something female about it. There just
Which is really hard to put.
But also they're kind of like, they're goth girls.
As opposed to D squared.
Yes.
It's all about kind of.
Thank you.
That could be the mantra
It's
for
true.
every show studio panel, as opposed to TC.
But also another interesting thing, because they're American, they're kind of goth girls. This is a really important thing. They inspire people the way goths inspire a tribe and a loyalty. You know, in America, more than most cultures, there is that thing about the perfect glossy woman. They're not about that at all. They're the other girl. They're the one that they were the girls that were unpopular at school. And as we know with goths, that's a huge. You know, that's a huge force, a huge tribal force at work, which connects people. And I think I think want them in that way.
In a way that's very female. They really,
They do
I
get
think
it.
they really
They're
do.
not the mean girls.
No,
They're not mean. They're not
No.
goopy. They're not
No,
goopy. They're not
definitely.
vegan. They're not perfect.
No, they're not
you know.
peaky.
No,
They're not
they're not-
peaky.
They're not
Yeah.
peaky.
Because I get what you're saying, and I think it's so important because a lot is made of, you know, oh, there are so many female designers around at the moment. Isn't fashion becoming more about women? Yeah, and it's really thrown out though, and actually it's often designers that aren't sympathetic to other women's bodies or anything like that. But I think with the Rodarte sisters, there is something that feels special about it. And I think
I think what I was trying to say is that
can't
instead
see
of, you know, the first thing is, oh, they're two strong, powerful women. I want to say they're two, yes, they're women, but they're two incredible sisters.
Yeah.
You know, I love the fact that Rodarte is the way you pronounce the mother's maiden name.
Yeah.
And I love, to me, there's so much depth there. You know, the narratives, the source of references, the point of references, they're so otherworldly. They're so, I want to get into their heads.
Yeah, they're not
when I'm
like-
working with a stylist, I want to get into her head or his head and just say, you know, what kind of girl are we creating? What kind of story are we creating? You know, what does she eat for breakfast? This person that you know we're you know dressing up in. It's just, it's so much more than them just being two strong women.
And they're not relying on sex appeal as well. If we're going to go
Right.
take the
I mean,
feminist,
their clothes are
that's
super
right.
sexy,
That's
but
what,
like
and that's
Hilary
probably
said,
part of their
not,
strength.
you know, in the
but-
conventional way that a man would think.
No, absolutely.
In a way.
Yeah,
They
really,
are witchy,
they're goth.
yeah.
They're goth. They're
It's
goth.
also a bit like Grimm's fairy tales.
Yeah.
Kind of crossed with Mad Max and a bit of
Yeah.
goth and Xena warrior princess, you
And
know,
Star
shapes
Wars
in there.
now.
You know, this
Come on, let's start the damn show.
Yay!
Yeah, let's have a
go
look at this.
Rodarte.
Well, I'm interested though that we've said.
Oh,
wow.
Ooh, they're not so goth now.
Yeah, it's
wow.
like-
Look at that.
Rewind.
Goth on
Wow,
acid.
I've been tangoed.
But even we're talking about these.
Yeah, go.
Because even the colours, you know, you've got. God, I sound like. But you know, they're flowing. You know, even the colours are kind of off, aren't they?
Yes.
The pink
Yeah,
and the
totally.
yellow.
Yeah, they are off.
So
They're
it's
not
still,
easy to wear.
It's still off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
that's
love
odd.
that.
It's that
Pink
harder thing of
shoes.
ugliness.
Pink shoes with mustard.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's so good. It's so wrong, but it's so good.
It's a kind of like cumin or
Yes.
Yeah.
because it's not
Yeah.
saffron.
And
No,
the
it
pink
isn't.
is so washed out with the beige. It's kind of
Lovely.
highlighting the washed outness
Yeah.
of the pink.
Yeah.
It's like adding a
Brown
pink sock into a
socks.
whitewash.
Yeah.
But ugly always feels new. That's like something Miuccia Prada always says. But
I don't think it's ugly.
Say
no,
again.
but it is ugly in a sense. You know, it's not conventional.
Yeah, I don't think men
Who
would
wants to
say,
be
I don't,
conventional?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because I don't think men would say, "Oh, that dress would be lovely if you put some socks on with the high heels."
Yeah.
You know?
Some brown socks.
Some brown
socks.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that colour palette. The
But
red
the colour
Yeah,
palette's
really good.
brilliant.
Yeah, it's great.
That mustard with the red.
Yeah.
I love this mustard thing.
It
the
looks
pale
like it
blue.
makes everything look like whole.
Oh, that's like that jacket you came in and remember the
Thanks,
World War
Hilary.
II bomber? Yeah. And you cut the sleeves off.
Oh, you
Perfect.
see,
Oh, you
so
see,
on
me and those
trend.
girls, we're just thinking
But I
as
love
one.
this kind of the off-the-shoulder thing because I keep bringing up Prada because I'm obsessed with Prada. But you know, when there was that kind of very, you know,
Oh, the one
that-
shoulder.
Yeah, one shoulder and very kind of undressed and
Yeah.
slightly bedraggled, and I love that. I think that to women that's
it's
very
lovely.
sensual.
My sweater just
I don't
happened to
think this
fall
looks
off
too
my shoulder
bedraggled.
completely by accident.
I like the high ruche of the waist.
I'm not sure about that bra thingy going on with the red trousers.
But I think that's their craftsmanship coming through. You know, they always do something like that, an interesting detail, a little rosette on a collar or something. And that's I love the craftiness within the
different from
touch
that.
by
Oh, yes,
hand
yes.
thing.
No, there's more.
Are there enough designers who do that, who focus so much on craft, almost for craft's sake, rather than just visuals? Because
Oh yes.
And you
But
could
they did the
show
whole
them.
knitwear thing for the sports, didn't they?
yeah,
I think, you know, a tremendous amount of Dolce & Gabbana. You've got craft going on. Medium Kirchhoff.
Yeah, Medium's
John
very
Rocha,
similar, aren't they?
when you
Yeah.
think of John Rocha, all of his work, the crochet, the applique is all done. You
but
know, by
perhaps
hand.
not in America. It's not so much of a
No.
kind of that kind of hand touch thing. It's very much, I think, integral to how we work in London. You know, Phoebe
Yeah.
English or John
I
Rocha or
love that
Simone
check.
Rocha.
I mean that check kind of off. It's kind of wrong. It's like
It is all a little bit off,
but it's great.
Lumberjack.
So do you have the story? Do you have a press release?
Oh, I love that thing on the right.
Yes.
That with the little swishy
fish
bit of
tail.
jewel.
That's adorable.
The goth coming in.
Luke, do you have the...
We know
Gorgeous.
that the later looks are very much so they've called things like Star Wars, so they've got a Luke Skywalker on sort of prints and Yoda as well. So there's
I haven't
this
seen
kind of
Princess Leia yet.
so there's this kind of fairy tale geekishness to it.
I really like the shape of the trousers and the waisting and the cutaway shoulders.
This feels slightly more relevant though than last season in terms of just you can imagine this being actually worn really easily.
Yeah, it
last
is.
season
very
It has
well,
quite
like
commercial.
It's a kind of futuristic, quirky, off. I mean, look at that.
Look at that.
Great. Yeah, nice
Electric
But
violet.
it's like it does have that slight early 80s
Early
feel with
80s,
the
yeah.
tight polo necks.
Yes.
Definitely.
Kind of almost like Child's version of the 70s
Yeah.
and early 80s, kind of in a weird kind of way.
I love the colours.
Oh, that is fabulous.
Scooby-Doo.
Oh, look at that. Is that Cara?
No.
Gorgeous.
It's a funny bit of
That
Bonnie,
is a
Bonnie and Clyde
fabulous
action
look.
going on.
Yes, that's it.
Bonnie and
Bonnie and
Clyde.
Clyde goes to some
Yeah.
nutty disco on another planet.
Bonnie and Clyde goes disco.
Look, it is. You know,
You're
off
right.
the shoulder. You were talking about the shoulder just now.
Interesting. I really like it. It's very unusual, isn't it?
It is
Really
very unusual.
It's
It's
not
hard to
casual.
pinpoint, actually. It's hard to...
It does remind me of Prada a lot though, the off the shoulders, the Lurex, that kind of ugliness.
Oh.
It takes a while to process it all,
Yeah, it
actually.
does.
Yeah.
It does. It's a
It
completely
does have that real film,
different shape.
that real film thing. I think with that polo neck, it's that
Yeah, that
almost looks like
cinematic
nylon,
thing.
doesn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
like that kind of
And the
synthetic
glasses.
polo neck thing. I love.
Have they signed some kind of optical deal?
Yeah, because they've got lots of glasses, haven't they?
Yeah. You know, that kind of nerdy librarian.
Yeah.
Well, they
Love it.
Oh,
That dress on
look
the
at
right
that
is
one
gorgeous.
on the
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
the eyewear was
Gorgeous.
done for them by Olivia Peoples.
Okay.
For them,
right,
Olivia
okay.
Peoples.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
So good.
and that green one.
That green's gorgeous.
Green's fantastic.
Sleeves.
We're getting
You said that with such love. You're like,
But it's a bit Guinevere.
Yes,
yeah,
very
it's
good.
always very
You're
fairy
right.
tale. You know, they
Yes.
always talk about growing up, running through the forest.
Oh, there's my
and it's very-
dress.
Oh, there's.
Oh, we've been
hang on,
shopping.
Ray.
Hold on, whose dress is it?
We're going to have to meet after.
I know, we might have to have a little fight.
Oh,
Gorgeous.
one in the
Very nice.
middle.
Love that one in the middle.
This feels like old school Rodarte, you know,
Yes,
you
it
know,
does.
that
Yeah, you're right.
fairy tale, the romance that we.
In the black.
It is romantic,
Yeah, it is romantic.
Very nice.
and it's very, very, very
It's
sensual.
ethereal,
But
yeah.
it's also kind of like the girl from the wrong side of the tracks.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
a way.
Yes.
Like the gothic.
Yeah.
Somehow just
Yeah.
not.
But doing it her way, I think.
Yeah.
A very kind of individual take on
Yeah,
it.
because they're a little bit scruffy, aren't they?
Is that a skeleton?
So no, this is the Star Wars print.
Oh,
right.
there's
R2D2.
R2D2. No, it's
And Luke
C3PO.
Skywalker, yeah,
C3PO.
C3PO.
Luke
Oh,
Skywalker.
yes.
Yeah.
I'm not as keen on that actually, the print.
Well,
All
I
we
kind
need
of
now
love
is
the
Harrison
nerdiness
Ford.
of it. It's like saying it's okay to wear glasses, it's okay to kind of wear your weird granddad's check and your socks with your heels and your love Star Wars. It's quite sort of empowering.
It's-
Perhaps they're secret Star Trekkers.
Probably.
Star Wars.
George
you know,
Star Wars.
there's people out there who actually
Those
buy
people.
everything to do.
Yeah.
And you actually can get a
Trekkies.
glimpse of it there. The set's incredible. It's all these kind of rows of neon like lightsabers going all
Lovely.
around the set, which is
Lovely.
really incredible.
Quite interesting though, we went from sort of 80s quirky human to subtle, really obvious, not obvious but very,
Yeah.
you can see the reference. It's right
Yeah.
before you, CP3, what's
Which
it
is
called? C3PO.
which kind of contradicts everything we were saying before because we all talked about, you know,
How obscure.
it is hard to understand, which I guess that maybe when I was asking about the fact they're women, I think another thing is the fact they're sisters, and that's what's so special about sisters. You know, they have their own languages. You know, no one
Absolutely.
can ever
And
understand.
they grew up with the
They
same.
get it.
They grew up with the same
Yeah.
TV programs
Yeah,
and
exactly.
references and everything.
But you really feel like that. You feel like the team, whoever's doing this, they must have such shorthand with each other.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Because it's so specific.
Yeah.
But what it is, it's like the other collections they do, it's amazing. It's Rodarte.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's slightly off.
Yeah.
You know, you sort of want to be that girl. You know, that's who they are. And they sort of just seem to do it every time.
Is this a strong collection for them? Because I know
Yeah.
last season
Oh,
we talked about a bit.
Very
Fabulous.
strong.
Yeah.
It's
It
great.
is really
Yeah.
just so
Sensational.
It's really good
Yeah.
for young Hollywood because I'm so fed up with young
Yeah.
Hollywood
Oh
looking
my
like
God.
45-year-olds.
Yeah.
They're in such a
Also,
hurry.
that-
They're all going to get there.
I mean, all the young,
This is
under
young.
25
Great. And
actresses. I would have thought would absolutely kill to wear something.
It would be fantastic to see them in something like
Jennifer
this.
Lawrence.
Yeah, it would be beautiful.
Yeah,
It would
but
be
you
wonderful.
could wear the pair of biker, that black
Totally.
dress with the shoulder,
That'd be gorgeous.
And a black polo neck.
Yeah.
But we're saying it's young, but it doesn't feel like exclusive. It doesn't feel like it could only
it'd just
be
be
worn,
nice. It wouldn't make the young look old, is what I meant. Because all the long dresses are making them look very.
I love the pink with the grey sweatshirt, the grey
It's very
polo.
cool. That looks vintage. It's very cheap date.
Yeah.
That's good.
Do we like that kind of vintageness to it though? We've seen
Yes.
a lot of that recently. You know, you mentioned Medium Ketchup before, and they kind of do that idea where you could almost try and fashion your own version of it by what you can find at
But
home.
it's like you've got that customization feel,
Yeah.
where the couture element of Rodarte, they've made it really explicit.
Yeah.
You know, so the lace looks like, you know, at the bottom here, or you can feel the components. You can really see the different components, which kind of just adds to their kind of brilliance.
But also, you can't hear the crackle of man-made fibre. You can't hear that crackle of man-made fibre. You know it's probably
Well, that's
really
why I think
good
it
lace.
always feels so romantic, because even when they do something that isn't romantic in its inspiration or ethereal in its inspiration, the fact that it's so touched by hand, it always gives it this kind of otherworldliness.
Yeah, it's true.
I love the way
makes
it's
it
been
special.
styled.
Yeah.
Absolutely
It's got a
beautiful.
really great eccentricity to it.
Who's the
Absolutely.
stylist?
Just sort of
Throw it together.
Say.
No.
cool.
Yeah.
I think
they
it's
do it
always just
themselves,
them,
yeah.
isn't it?
Is it?
No, they must do it themselves. You can see the way it's
Yeah.
put together. It's
I'd love to hear them talk about this collection.
Yeah,
Is there
much
what
was
rather
in
than
their
us.
We'll just hand over to them. Is there enough eccentricity around anymore though?
I think it's getting
Sometimes
increasingly
Yeah, I think it's getting
Diminished.
Hard, isn't
diluted.
it? It's getting hard.
Yeah, and also I think when people are eccentric, like Helena Bonham Carter, you know, it's like almost like people are kind of so shouted down for being, you know,
That's the fact,
eccentricity is
But that's because
so
we've got
kind
the
of
power of a sidebar
poked
shame.
at now.
Yeah.
it
Or
seems
even
to
as
me.
commercialised in a way. I think
Yeah,
it's
it's
kind of
commercialised. So a good idea stops being a good idea because
Yeah.
it's just,
it's really hard
it's
to
not an
be
idea anymore.
But
No
also,
no one then ever looks and says, well, Helena Bonham Carter looks amazing. It's eccentric.
because everyone's
Yeah.
looking
You
at the
know,
sidebar of shame, everyone looks at the Daily Mail, and that's what they're all looking at. And
And
so
look
that's
at-
they're the
yeah.
jury. But also we've got to remember who's buying clothes. Let's face it, who is buying clothes? Who's got money right now? We all know who they are. They're more likely to buy things which are a little bit more, you know,
Mainstream.
conservative and mainstream. They also want, the new rich tend to want to conform,
Yeah.
you know, and you know, you're not going to invest. I don't know, but having
But
said
as
that,
much
it's
as
not
they
all the
want
case,
to
but-
conform, I think people do want to be original, and I think if I spent, which is, don't worry, I'm not going to, if I spent 30 grand on an outfit, I would be very irritated if I walked in and saw somebody else in the same thing. And I think labels like Rodarte or the demi-coutures, I think you can have your classics and then you punctuate it with pieces like this, or you have showpieces for moments. And I think that actually you can't just use magnolia paint on every single wall. You've got to have a few pictures and posters, and I think that they're artistic injections into what fashion's doing now, and I think that's why they're really relevant, because in a sea of beige they are original.
And we all,
sorry,
I
just-
also think
all of us, I was just going to say, one of those pieces you could wear with your wardrobe.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I
That's
wanted
really
to say,
easy
very
to throw
similar.
in with anything
yeah,
else.
which I think is a strength of this collection as opposed to some that we've seen recently from this.
You
I
need to
think
have the whole look,
The
wouldn't
girl
you?
that would wear this would mix it with probably
Their own.
something they already
Yeah.
have,
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
vintage, something quirky, customise, not
Yeah,
customise
I mean-
this, but customise something vintage of
Yeah.
theirs,
Yeah.
mix it in with this to, you know,
Or with
Even
Topshop or
the
H&M.
middle one
Exactly.
is,
Yeah.
you know, it's sort of quite creepy. You know, it goes a bit Stepford
Yeah.
Wife.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah, it does.
it's kind of almost pristine. It's almost
Yeah.
like, you know, there's something kind of Connecticut-y,
Kind of-
ice
Absolutely.
stormy about
Ice stormy,
it. You know,
and the profile of the
also-
middle one.
And, but I can't remember what I was going to say. I read to everyone. I can't remember.
But it was
what I said,
fabulous.
but it was amazing.
I haven't seen that for a while.
What's
That
that?
top, at the top,
It's
you
my
know,
favourite
everything,
colour.
the stretchy
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the tops
Yeah.
in the 80s we all used to wear.
Yeah.
Or I
Everything
did
that you
anyway.
think was wrong, you know, mustard, orange,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
shoulder, you know, that stretchy fabrics, like really, no, put it all together.
It's quite
And wear it with
fearless.
brown socks
Yeah.
And a beret.
Yeah.
and a beret.
I mean, it's so style. I know they're fashion designers, and
Yeah.
but it's
style,
to me
yeah.
they're much more about style.
Yeah.
Which is that thing of you're not fashion is like here now, and it's lots of things, but style is that thing of you're drawing on something over there and something over here and something there, and you know, and that's what they really do. And this is, you know, it's so their own style.
And it's so their own style. It's so lovely to see such a strong point of view. I'm looking at the hair, and it's exactly how they have their hair. You know, I actually don't mind that narcissism in designers, because I feel like you want a point of view. That's what designers are supposed to be.
It's a bit of integrity.
You know, there's seasons sometimes where you can't tell one designer from the other because they're all kind of doing the same thing. I don't want to see.
Rodarte always looks
that's not what I want from my designers. I want them to have whether I dislike it.
Floaty thing, but they've made it like a colour that's completely unconventional for a floaty dress that's accessible to be in. You know, it's not in a white shift. You know, it's not white. It's not cream
or pale.
You know, exactly. It's just it's in mustard. It's orangey mustard, and that kind of says that. I mean, that's Rodarte.
I think they've got this sort of eccentricity that must be applauded. One of the few in London Fashion Week I can think of who still maintain that sort of sense of eccentricity and individuality is Medium Kirchhoff. You know, they sort of boldly go and they don't really care who follows or who doesn't or who falls by the wayside. And I think Rodarte are sort of in that
vein.
Beautiful niche.
And we've talked quite a lot on this panel about, you know, who would be the girl that wears this, and is it wearable, and what does it say about how women dress? But I guess it goes back to something we were discussing at the start, which is I question whether that, obviously they're designers and they want to see women in their clothes, but we also need to think about how important it is to them to see their clothes in an exhibition setting, or, you know, it's not for them. I can
see how they work. They work from an artistry point of view. I think they're really singular, and that's why they cut through the noise. You know, they cut through the white, whatever it is. They cut through that, and they keep. You know, and this show's done that again, where there's just, you know, and you can really see that.
I can see a Michelle Obama in that yellow on the right there. No, I could.
Yeah, that would be great.
I could see Michelle Obama in that the yellow on the right with
or
her
the
arms.
one in the middle. I mean,
Vanessa Friedman did a piece today though about whether Michelle Obama's good for young designers. I haven't read it, it's on my bookmark list, so I want to check it out after this.
But the dress in the middle was, you know, flesh tone, or what do they call it, American tan.
Yeah, American tan.
And some nice sort of gold embellished high heels. That would be a sort of Rotary lunch, or, you know, cocktail party.
Samantha Cameron could wear that.
But I think they give you the opportunity to wear it in a non-subverted way.
Yes.
You know, you can subvert it, which they've done. Or you can be quite conventional with it. You can kind of do, because it's that style, isn't it? And they present that.
Do you love styling it, or when you get it, do you almost feel like there's such a story, so many references behind it? Is it sometimes difficult to kind of work with because it's already infused with so much?
I love that, because if it's the story that you're doing, because then it's like, yes, I love that, that's right.
Yeah, and that's when you're seeing the individual pieces on a rail. It's very different from seeing it presented in this way. You know?
And I guess it's that thing where they give you the chance to put yourself onto it, don't they? With each look. So we're impressed then. We all want to be the Rodarte girl. Seems like we're particularly impressed. We were impressed from the start. We all said we love Rodarte, but this is a strong season for them.
Yeah,
lovely.
I think they're a real original group.
I mean, there's at least, you know, 6 pieces, 8 pieces, you know. If I had the money, I would just be out there. You know, tap, tap, buy now, transfer to cart.
That's quite a good takeaway for this panel then, add to shopping bag.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, ladies.
Thank
you.
Thanks, Lou.
Thank you, Rodarte.
Yeah, thank you, Rodarte.
Yes, thanks, Rodarte.
Should we give them a clap?
Yes!